All right. This has been a great week in the National Quartet Convention. We've met a lot of friends, and I've got Gene McKinney with me here. And I'm going to let him introduce himself, as the history of how he's been involved with the music industry. I tell you, these are the interviews, some of the interviews, and this is, I know, is going to be one of them. It is great to have those that have been around in the ministry. As we are reaching this next generation, they need to know our history. They need to know where we're coming from. I'm afraid we have missed that a lot in reaching this next generation, failing to help them to understand. So, Gene, thank you for coming to spend some time with us, and really just want you to share a lot about where you've come from in the music industry and your heart, so we can get that to our audience.
Yeah. Well, back in 1968, I heard quartet for the first time, and it's called the Hymnals. They were from La Follette, and they had Elmer Cole was their lead singer. And as a high school kid, I was in a high school. It was the first quartet I'd ever heard, and I bought an album because I liked it. And that was kind of odd, because that was when the Beatles
I was going to say,
everybody else.
That would have been the normal that day.
Really? Yeah. And I'd put them on the stack of records that played while I go to sleep.
Yeah.
The Hymnals were in there. And, of course, Elmer Cole's voice was just, it was just something special. And he wrote some beautiful songs. And so little did I know that 2 years later, I would start with a friend of mine, Jim Bluford. We had started a group, and we elected to name it the Kingdom Heirs. And I've got, if you want to see, I've got about a 20-minute, 12-year history of the early Kingdom Heirs on YouTube, if you want to.
We're definitely going to want to
that
have
in some,
that. Yes.
Yeah,
In
type
fact,
that in.
I'll make sure we get that link and get that on our website, because that is one of the groups that is really legendary and where we're at. So,
well, I can fast forward then. We got started, and we had early turnovers. Most people do, because we started getting more dates than some of them wanted to do.
To travel,
the people that didn't want to do it got out. And so we picked up some steam somehow as a bunch of kids that didn't know what they were doing. But it was during a time when a lot of the churches were doing Saturday night singings and Friday night singings, and they would do cottage prayer meetings and things like that. And we would go to those things and sing. And it caught on, and we got the eye of J. Basil Mull, who was a big promoter out of Knoxville with gospel music. He had the big. He'd say it was the 5,000 watt powerhouse in Nashville that he was doing a syndicated program off of. And so we got more and more bookings, and we were doing some television. We even made an appearance on Archie Campbell's show that he had in Knoxville. He was out of Bull's Gap, and that was he's famous for what's the show in Nashville, I can't think of it.
Now you're asking me to dig into my brain, but there, I know which one you're talking about.
It wasn't Laughing. That was the other guys. Anyway, so J. Basil Mull, the people from Silver Dollar City, which became Dollywood, reached out to J. Basil Mull to ask him about recommending someone. They wanted to put music in some gospel music in their park during the craft festival. And so he recommended us, and we went up and did a program for the principals of the Silver Dollar City in the Glenstone Lodge, and they liked what they heard. And so they started using us. This would have been in 1976. And so we did the craft festival in October, and that went over so well with the park visitors that they added 2 Young Christians Days in the spring and April, and then they added a 2-week Mountain Music Festival in the summer, and they were using us on all this stuff. And we just became kind of synonymous as far as gospel music people that were coming to Silver Dollar City. The Kingdom Heirs were going to be there.
Yeah.
And so that was in the late 70s, early 80s. In 81, we went to Nashville and did our first record at Hilltop with a piano player who had been the piano player of the Hensons.
Okay.
We sung a lot with the Hensons and with the Kingsmen. Jim Hamill produced 3 of our records back in the 70s up at Tri-State Recording Studio. And so Gary Prim.
Yeah. Okay.
Gary Prim had been the keyboard guy for the Hensons, and he retired, just decided to do session work and produce stuff in Nashville. So he did our 10th anniversary album as the Kingdom Heirs, and we'd put an Elmer Cole song on our albums too. But Elmer wrote 10,000 Years, which everybody in the industry knows about. But so we did that. Then we went to, we weren't a full-time group. We were doing 2 nights practice a week, working a 40-hour job during the day, getting on the bus and going as far as Detroit, Michigan and Jacksonville, Florida to sing wherever we were booked. And we did, in 82, the year that after the Craft Festival, I said, I'm going to get out of this because I got 2 kids and I want to raise my family. And I left and led choir in my church and did that for a long time. And that was when Steve French and Chris French came in. And they came in and molded together with 5 guys that were with us. Back in those days, we had a 5-man band with had the 4 vocalists. So we had a steel player, lead player, keyboard player, drummer, steel, I've already said steel, and a percussion guy.
Because back then you had to have the whole band. You didn't have all the
have
digital
soundtracks.
Stuff and soundtracks and stuff you've got today. So you had to have the whole band.
So I got out and did those things, and the Kingdom Heirs went on, did fabulous. And so my wife and daughter got the old guys back together again for my 60th birthday. And so we just got together again just for fun. And next thing you know, we were taking bookings again, and now we're the Heartland Quartet.
Oh, okay. Yes.
And we enjoy singing. We're getting ready to cut another record here. We went up to, there's a brand new studio, first-class studio up in Candler, North Carolina, where the Primitive Quartet's from.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
and it's called The Shop.
Yeah.
And they put 18 musicians in there, and we got the music down, and we're working toward getting all the vocals down now, and we'll have a good time with that. Along the way, I wrote a lot of songs that the groups that they did, and one little funny story, the very first song that I wrote a song called Watching and Waiting, which is pretty relevant to today's time because you're watching for the signs of the time, and man, if there were ever a time.
Well, I was going to say, how apropos for today. Wow.
Exactly.
Wow.
And so I went to WKXB Radio, which was the Christian radio station in Knoxville, and I said, I've written this song, what should I do with it? You know, and they gave me a guy's name in Nashville, Ron Tom Publishing Company, Tom Walls, and sent him the song, and he sent me a contract back. And I was like, this is cool.
Wow.
And come to find out, back then there was a group called the Seagull Brothers and Naomi.
Okay.
Seagull Brothers and Naomi. There were anybody that knew gospel music back in those days would know them. Well, Lamar Seagull had left the group and started his family group, and so he made Watching and Waiting, the title cut on an album, and that he cut in '74, I think. And it charted and did okay, and so that was kind of the beginning of my songwriting. So we're getting ready to do one on this new project that we're doing called God Knows, and it's very relevant to something we need to keep in mind. It doesn't matter whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. God knows, and He understands what's going. You got to remember, He created us, and He knows us better than we know ourselves.
Yeah.
He knows every cell of our body. So I just wanted to write a song that talked about that. And you'll have to hear it to deal with it.
We'll definitely need to get that. I know that's something we'll do. I will tell you, now that I've kind of learned that history, I want to say it was either 78 or 79. So I was obviously much younger, but our family went to Silver Dollar City. And honestly, I'd have to say that was probably my first exposure to gospel music. and it had to have been you guys.
It was us.
And it made an impression on me. And I came across a friend of mine at school. I mentioned that, and he goes, "Oh," he said, "you got to hear these groups." And he named a couple of groups, and one of the groups that he had an album for was you guys. and it just like, honestly, that really got my attention in gospel music. And so going into the 80s, it began to, my love for the music. I was out there buying the albums, doing those things. So
Well, and
I want to personally thank you.
Thank you.
For being a part of really, I think what affected me and got me into music, because that was probably one of my first exposures to gospel music, was being at Silver Dollar City. And like I said, it was either 78 or 79. You know, I know it was before 1980 because we had moved at that point. It was before we moved back down to Florida. But it did make an impact to me, so thank you very much.
Well, the beginning of Facebook made it possible to touch a lot of people that you might have met in the past.
Yeah.
And so I was just, I ran across that album. I'm talking about, this is 50 years ago. I ran across the album of the hymnals.
Oh, wow.
And so I, just to put something on Facebook, I took a picture of the cover and I recorded the song and I put it on Facebook, and I would kind of zoom in slow and pull back out of the hymnals and the various people that were in the group. And the neatest thing happened. Within 2 days of me putting it up, and it sounded great, but 2 days of me putting it up, Elmer Cole.
Oh, wow. Wow. Reached out. Wow.
Send me a friend request.
Wow. That's good.
That was amazing.
That's amazing.
Because he went on to sing with Tennessee. Willie went in Tennessee as he sung with the Oak Ridge Boys.
Yeah.
So that was quite a treat.
Yeah.
And met a lot of good people in this industry. And one thing that I found out as far as singing, we've sung over the years at a lot of different kinds of churches. We've sung at Assemblies of God, Baptist, Nazarene, Methodist, you know.
All kinds of, yes, right.
And I found that there's good Christian people in every one of them.
Yeah.
You know,
And it's
no
so,
place or body is perfect,
yeah.
but there's good Christian people in all those that really care.
And it does make a difference to be able to see that in so many different
It
areas.
does, yeah.
One of the things we've saw over the years of ministry, and I've had to help people, you're not alone. There are others out there. You may not know them. You may not necessarily dot all your I's and cross all your T's, but you're not alone. God's got people everywhere. There's a passage of scripture that says God has children that you are not aware of. It's okay.
Oh, yeah.
You'll be all right. It's good. And that's one of the things I loved about the industry, because it does get into those areas that I may not be able to get into, but you guys were able to and still are. And again, just thank you for your willingness way back then to say, Lord, what do you want me to do, and get in there, and now still doing it, because again, we need this next generation to see this, and I think the Bible's pretty clear. Those of us who got a little bit of gray at the top of our head,
Thankfully, it's still hanging on.
Yeah, still hanging on a little bit. It's our job to teach that younger, and we got to give them that message. So thank you again for all that you've done and what you're continuing to do. And I promise you keep putting it out there, we'll keep getting it out to the audience.
Well, the one thing that I would say that we need to remember too is our generation was I'm speaking of mine, you guys are young. We were the baby boomers.
Yeah.
And it was a big bubble in the population.
Yeah.
You know what? Those baby boomers are still out there, and there's a lot of them, and what they're really missing is the old gospel hymns.
Yes. Yeah. And I think I've said this earlier this week in several of the interviews, the younger generation gravitated to something different, but I'm starting to see they're sitting there going, it wasn't fulfilling, it didn't meet the need, and they're starting to swing back. And that's one of the reasons why we exist as a radio station, is we're here to, okay, here's the answer, here's the thing. So your generation can listen, and we can grab the next one and bring them in.
Yeah. Sounds great.
Well, thank you again. This has been a lot to me because it really made a difference in my life hearing the music back when I was younger.
Another coincidence, when we did the startup music for a Paul Belcher concert in Knoxville, where they had the Primitives and the Cooks and the Spencers, and a gentleman who flew in from Vegas to do sound for one of the groups that was there, told me he knew his father was the pastor of a church in Louisville, Kentucky, back in the day when we were the Kingdom Heirs. They loved us there. That place would pack out when we would go in there, and he said, this is not the essence of my story, but he said, I used to think you had a top 5 voice in the entire gospel music industry. And I said, well, thank you a lot.
Thank you. Yeah,
but they made us honorary members of their church and everything else, so that kind of stuff happens.
Good.
And we connected on Facebook too, after all those years.
And I'm thankful for the technology now because we can make these connections and stuff. So, well, we will definitely be reaching out to you on Facebook and connecting, let our audience as well be able to respond to you as well, because we need another generation hearing what you guys have done.
And if you're if the listeners are within 150 miles of Knoxville, and you'd like to have us come to your church, the Heartland Quartet, you could reach out to us. We won't charge you anything. We come for a love offering that'll help cover expenses. And if we do concerts where people are getting charged for tickets and all that, we get a price we set for that.
Right, that's different.
But churches of any size, we'll sing for 5 or 5,000. We don't care.
Good.
We feel if a door's open, we need to walk through it. He has a reason for us to be there.
Well, we definitely have listeners in the area, so we will make sure they know about this and go from there.
Great.
I know a number of pastors in the area, so I'll be glad to pass that on to them.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
God bless you.
Thank you.